Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Permaculture Central Coast monthly gathering, gathering on Zoom. Hi, Matt. Thanks for the wave. It's always nice to have a Zoom wave. Firstly, before we start the meeting, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the different lands we're meeting on this evening and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And always with a heart full of gratitude for their amazing stewardship of all these lands for millennia. So this evening, we've got a fantastic opportunity to meet with Mark Brown and Kate Beveridge from Purple Pear Farm. And I'm sure many of you have heard of Purple Pear Farm and probably Googled them. If you haven't already visited them, I'm sure you've probably been online and seen their socials and their beautiful website, which is fantastic. Mark and Kate practice permaculture, but also biodynamics and regenerative agriculture, which is the topic of this evening's talk. We've got a beautiful spot just outside of Maitland in a place called Annandale, and yeah, really blessed to have done my PDC, my initial PDC with them. So they run PDCs on the farm. They have in the past been having internships. I'm not sure where that's at the moment. And they run a community supported agriculture system, which may have changed recently too, I think, from what they were telling me the other night. But a really awesome system of the way they do things there based on the Linda Woodrow Mandala system. And I'll hand over to Mark, who'll be doing most of the talking tonight, though I'm sure that Kate won't be able to help herself and will chime in at some point. Any questions, if you wouldn't mind popping them in the chat pod, ideally, and we'll stop periodically and Sandy will be monitoring that and going through that. And also, if you wouldn't mind just keeping yourself on mute in the meantime, and you would have all just noticed that we are just recording and this will be uploaded to the YouTube channel. And thank you, Mark and Kate, for giving permission for that. I really appreciate that. And it just means more people can access and learn more about permaculture, which is super important. So thanks so much for coming along tonight, Mark. I was telling the people that were on initially, Kate said, no way, Mark won't do that. We won't talk on Zoom, but he's very kindly offered to do that for us tonight. So that is an extra special blessing for us because it's his first time presenting on Zoom. And he'll just be using an informal chatting style and question and answer and won't be using death by PowerPoint tonight. So I'll hand over to Mark and Kate if she joins. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Kerry. I'd like to start by inviting Kate to bring in consciousness of our First Nations people here in the Hunter Valley. And could you bring us in on that, please, Kate?
Yes, thank you, Kerry, for your lovely acknowledgement. And we'd like to also acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Wonnarua people and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And also we pay our respects to any First Nations people who may be listening in on this chat tonight. Thank you.
Yes, so did that come across? That's okay? Cool. So we'd like to talk a little tonight about, I guess the primary goal for this evening is to talk about the relationship between biodynamics and permaculture. But I'd like to expand that through into regenerative agriculture and all of the little things that we take from regenerative agriculture to make our permaculture place work. We have a saying, Purple Pear Farm is permaculture in action, and we run our property, particularly with regards to the ethics and principles of permaculture. And we add to that little tools that we pick up along the way from regenerative agriculture. And so that's going to be the topic or the angle for tonight, if you like. Kerry said that this is the first Zoom. we're not particularly technology freaks, but we're going to give it a go. So once again, do put your questions into chat, and we'll endeavour to answer them as we go along, and hopefully from your questions we can build something that's entertaining and worthwhile. So Purple Pear Farm started as a concept in around the turn of the century, probably, but which is an amazing thing to think that this century turned 21 years ago. But 2006, we started Purple Pear Farm at Anambra. Maybe, Kate, you could give us a little bit of that history. Would you do that?
Sure. We started, I bought the place, the little farm here, 14 acres, in 23 years ago. And I just bought it as a horse property for my daughters. They were into horse riding. And it was a bare 14 acres, completely bare, nothing here except the house and a couple of stables. And very poor marginal land, great for the horses, but not much for anything else. And I felt it needed that some tender loving care, really. And I fell in love with the place, although it was quite a sad little place to start with. But we went away, Mark and I, for a couple of years, and were working on somebody else's farm. And then we decided all our food was coming back down here, so we decided to come back down to here and implement a permaculture design on this 14 acres here. And it's been quite a tricky and hard journey, really, in many ways, because the land is quite marginal and not your typical food growing land at all. But we thought that as educators, it was an important thing to be able to show people how to grow food or to build soil on really poor land, because not everybody can go and buy the best food producing land. A lot of it now has houses on it, so that makes it even harder. So we need to be able to build soil anywhere. And so that was our thoughts behind staying here and developing the farm here.
Just building on the ethics and principles, you know, it's just such a roadmap to building a life, really, when you consider that your decisions come from an ethic of earth care, people care, and fair share, what I like to call living within your means, or you know, taking responsibility for your life. So when your decisions are predicated on that ethic, and you're given the guidance of things like small and slow solutions, which becomes really handy when you haven't got very much money. But you know, all of those using diversity and the principles that guide the ethic in permaculture is just what we were doing day to day. And so that has been the building blocks for the farm, for Purple Pear Farm, has been the ethics and principles of permaculture. You know, we started to do that with very little money, and very little money lends itself to all sorts of homesteading ideas and things. So we started fermenting and preserving and making sourdough bread, and we're making cheese from the dairy cow and all of those things, and we just built up a portfolio of activities on the farm, I guess, built around that lifestyle that was made through the ethics and principles of permaculture. So building soil became an incredibly important part of just hang on a second. I have a little note here. Maybe Kate could read it out.
I'm reading the comments.
Oh, okay.
And there's a lovely one from Marie saying that she's here. So hi, Marie. Love you.
Yeah.
And then there's another one from, oh, I don't know who they're from, but anyway, wanting to know what our soil is like and how did we go about building up the soil.
Okay, yeah. Well, the first part of that is, as Kerry said, we were following the work of Linda Woodrow in Permaculture Home Garden, building a mandala market garden. So we built 7 mandalas, which there's 7 circles in each mandala, so 49 circles, and we're into production. But what we did with that was we let the chickens do a lot of the work in preparing that soil. And so with chickens and organic matter, we started to build the soil in the beds in the mandalas. But we were proponents in my previous market garden in Dungog. We were using biodynamic practices as a soil building exercise as well. And so we started to put the biodynamic preparations on the soil. But it's incredible how much work chickens do in building soil. They're fantastic little soil builders. And so, you know, just over time, and it wasn't overnight. I can remember we came with the goal from the first of the year, you know, January or February when we started, we were going to eat from the garden at Easter time. And we actually went for a picnic up in the Allen River, a beautiful spot in the Hunter Valley, and we took with us a red romaine lettuce to have with our picnic. And I mean, that was the best we could do in 3 or 4 months of soil building and working with the soil. But since then, it's just amazing to see the soil that's been built. It's deep. It's like sorry, Kate wants to say something.
Well, I was just going to say it was very, very heavy clay with about 1 centimetre of topsoil on there.
Which is a great start, mind you. If you've got clay, which is a colloid, to build soil, you're building soil on a colloid, you're doing all right. And it is gorgeous soil now. And
now we've got, what would you say?
Oh, it's probably about 15, 20 centimetres high, and then the same underneath. Yeah. So, you know, we're looking at a foot and a half of beautiful organic soil now. And that's with hardly any inputs. We've bought some hay in as mulch, but mostly we've used pasture slashings as mulch. And the chickens and the biodynamic preparations. And another little canny thing that we do in soil building is with the potting mix that we make for the seedlings, because we only plant seedlings in the beds, not seeds primarily. Some of the larger seeds and carrots and that you direct sow now. But we started to put basalt dust in our potting mix. And so each little plant that goes into the garden goes into a handful of biodynamic compost, a handful of basalt dust, and some cocoa peat and some compost in the mix too. So there's all these little plugs of fertility. So we talk about regenerative agriculture, and it's just amazing to see that the more we grow food in our garden, the better the garden gets. And that's truly regenerative. You know, that's the essence of what regenerative agriculture is about. is if you are actually going from a crook soil and building a really lovely soil whilst you are producing, that's regenerating soil. Love it. So the idea that
we've got a couple of questions here. One is explain biodynamics for those who are unfamiliar with it, and explain biodynamic compost. So if you, that's part of your presentation anyway. So
I suppose we can do that now. Yeah, a biodynamic compost is just compost that's made with a series of preparations that were given to us by Rudolf Steiner. 1924, Rudolf Steiner, who was working in a lot of different fields, education being one of them, through the Waldorf or Steiner education system, but also in medicine and in dance, architecture. He had a plethora of ideas and concepts that he brought to us with you know, through accessing a clairvoyance to some extent. So there's a certain mysticism about biodynamics which brings these preparations to us. We don't have to understand them all. A famous biodynamic farmer in the Hunter Valley, John Priestley, has often remarked the only way that these preparations won't work is if you don't use them. So we do that. We use them, and through using them, we've seen the effects that they have on the breakdown, the building of humus, and we've gone a little bit further into other aspects of biodynamics. What was the other one, Kate?
So explain biodynamic compost.
Yeah.
And what is biodynamics?
Okay, so biodynamics, the way it worked, as I said, Steiner was working on all of these things, and this group of farmers in Europe had noticed that, you know, with the implementation of artificial fertilizers and those sorts of things, they found that their fields, even back then, were starting to become less dynamic, and so they pleaded with Steiner to talk to them about agriculture, using his access to higher knowledges. And Steiner told him to go away. You know, he was a bit busy, but they persisted, and so finally he made space for 8 lectures that were delivered over Whitsun in a Swiss chalet, Count such and such, I've forgotten who now, sponsored this gathering, and Steiner delivered 8 lectures called Agriculture. And, you know, it could have been a bit more imaginative, but the agriculture lectures were given to these farmers, and Steiner said, here's some ideas, go away and develop them. And from those lectures comes the preparations that we put into the compost, but also some soil and some atmospheric preparations that we use as foundations for building humus, and for building that strength in the soil and in the atmosphere. Yeah, so that's basically where biodynamics has come from, and a lot of people have worked with the information that Steiner's given to put some scientific bones on all of this stuff, because it can be seen as a little bit out there. In fact, I think a lot of the talk in permaculture circles is that it's mixed up in Bill's woo-woo. Bill talked a lot about woo-woo and how there was a real problem with bringing esoteric concepts into permaculture because it was an earthly thing. And I can get that because there's, you know, there is a lot of that aspect. In reading what Bill said, I think woo-woo was more inclined with you know, meditations and yoga and that. And but anyway, that's a whole point. We can talk about that tonight too. I think that's an interesting conversation. But biodynamics was developed through the work of people like Maria Thune, who also puts out the Astral calendar. She did a lot of work in actually making experiments on the effect of the planets on growth, which came in part through Mayan cultures and other cultures that had worked with moon cycles and that sort of thing. But she did a lot of other work as well. And Onfred Pfeiffer was a protege of Steiner's, and he went off to work in America. I think one of the tips anyway, the San Francisco tip or something like that, was working with reducing biomass at the garbage tip through using these preparations. And he did a lot of work also in that, in transmutation, which is another one of those woo-woo things, I suppose. But the ability of a chemical structure to change that structure by swapping electrons and protons and turning from in the alchemy is the word I was trying to think of, you know, changing lead into gold, is the idea. But basically what the preparations do is they make minerals available to plants from the surrounding minerals. So there's a lot of ability to work with that sort of thing when you're working with biodynamics. Yes, that was Kerry said Maria Thune did the Astral calendar. Yeah, we actually use the Astral calendar from Brian Keats, who is now resident in the Hunter Valley, and he's been working with the work of Maria Thune to make it very pertinent to Australian conditions, and has some incredible insights in his calendar to aspects of changing weather and those sorts of things as well. So very informative calendar by Brian Keats called the Antipodean Astral calendar, available on the website at www. I don't know, but we can find out. Just Astral calendar, you'll find it. Yeah, so getting started in biodynamics is pretty easy. Antipodean Astral calendar, yeah, cool. Getting started in biodynamics is probably best done in a group situation, and we have been very fortunate to have the Hunter Biodynamic Group to be a place where you can talk about stuff, do field days and those sorts of things. The Hunter Biodynamic Group is in the process of reforming. COVID hasn't been very kind to community groups, and the Hunter Biodynamic Group may be a victim of that as well. But you know, reading, talking is a great way to start. I think that the real opportunity for biodynamics is in community gardens, where you know, as we get back into doing community gardening, to bring the influence of the biodynamic preparations to community gardens is an incredible opportunity that I'm certainly keen to pursue. So what have we got there?
Where do we get basalt dust?
Oh, basalt dust from. Can anyone else tell us where we get basalt dust from? It just comes from.
No,
Huh?
sorry.
No. Basalt dust you get from the landscape supply. They use it to put under pavers and things. It's called crusher dust, but make sure that you get the basalt one. It's generally a blue in colour, and it is a byproduct. We love it because it is a waste product. It's become a little bit more expensive now because people have been using it, but the railway ballast industry, they crush up this basalt to make the big ballasts for the rails, and the dust that comes off that crushing plant is what we use as drainage in our potting mix. And so it's just absolutely chocked with minerals. And when you get the biological breakdown of those minerals, you've got that continuing cycle of building soil and adding minerals to your soil. So, you know, just go to your landscape supply, look for basalt dust or crusher dust, cheap as chips, and very, very important addition to your garden or farm.
Best book for beginners in biodynamics.
Oh, who could know?
Grasp the nettle.
A really good one is, Grasp the Nettle. There's a fantastic video out by Lynette West called Biodynamic Gardening. Lynette West unfortunately passed away way too early. Lynette, an Aussie girl from down Canberra way. And it's well worth getting hold of that video. Yeah, Grasp the Nettle, Peter Proctor, a New Zealand guy, very approachable, unfortunately passed away as well. We've had a fairly rough time with biodynamic practitioners.
Well, they get old, actually.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we all get old. Yeah, so Peter Proctor also has a great video out that's worth looking at, featuring in part Vandana Shiva, but Peter Proctor goes to India. And that video is called One Man, One Cow, One Planet. And it talks a lot about biodynamics and how it can be how it can influence food production. Another great look at biodynamics, but you know, a very readable thing is a book called Secum, S-E-E-K.
S-E-K-U-M, I think.
S-E-K-U-M, and that's an Egyptian biodynamic farmer who is heavily into multiculturalism in Egypt, and has a fantastic concept of bringing community together under the banner of biodynamics.
And he greens the desert.
And he greens the desert, he does, yes. Without the use of too much, without the use of any chemicals. Yeah, so, you know, they're important parts, but where I really wanted to take tonight, if you'll follow me there, is just to look at aspects of regenerative agriculture, biodynamics being one of them. Who saw Charlie Massey? Who's Charlie Massey? You seen last night? I missed it, unfortunately, but I've seen a lot of his stuff. And you know, he was actually, in my mind, you know, along with Pasco and a few others, in bringing regenerative agriculture. And so we learn from these people. Charles Massey, Gabe Brown in America talks a lot about exudates and the importance of having plants growing in your yard. Is that Murray? Oh.
He wants to say hello.
Yeah, Rusty wants to say hello. Yes, so and even we talked about Bandana Shiva and the seed saving aspects. Hello, Rusty boy. Rusty's our little reject, aren't you, mate? But one of the things that both Kate and I have been heavily involved with has been holistic management, and it has been an incredible journey, an incredible way to start on this journey towards holistic management. Is a little like permaculture that's predicated on an ethic. Holistic management invites you to write a context, a holistic context for your life. Where do you want to be? Where do you see things going? How would you make your life, and what do you have to do to make it? And so you build a holistic context that once again guides your decision making. You know, if you want to live in a lovely forest environment or something like that, then you look at the decisions you make. Are they towards you achieving those goals? And there's a whole lot of tools within holistic management. You got anything on holistic management? No. That help you to make those decisions. So it is primarily a way of looking at what you want and how you want to get there, and the framework for decisions to make those things. So it's very much, and it's a lot deeper than that too. It was started in South Africa by, I'm having a little bit of a seniors night tonight. Someone can tell me in a second anyway, but Alan Savory, thanks to you. Alan Savory, who was working with elephants and their impact, and he had some incredible insights on how animals actually preserve and maintain the landscapes that they're in, if they're allowed to do some of the things that they naturally do, like not staying on the one place for too long. So, concepts of moving animals around in bunches are part of the work that Alan Savory has given us in managing farms and that sort of thing. But, more than that, there's just so much, it's so in-depth to get into holistic management. And so, as I said before, that's something that we reach out and we grab the parts of holistic management that work for Purple Pear Farm. Some of the other things in big herds of animals and that we're not particularly into, but we use those things. And it's the same for biodynamics. One of the concepts of biodynamics that really, I think, gels with permaculture is this concept of the farm as an organism. So Steiner talks about how each part of the farm couldn't really exist without the other parts. It's a little bit like having a hand, which is pretty useless unless you've got an arm to keep it away from your face, because rubbing your face isn't really cool. But each part of that farm works with other parts of the farm to make the farm as a whole organism. And I just love that, how it ties in with the circular notions of permaculture, how life cycles work to ensure that your farm runs by itself, with minimum inputs, but still flourishes. And that aspect of biodynamics really fits for me well within permaculture. Clara,
No, I'll get to you. So
Clara had a hand up before.
Sorry, I was just letting them know the chat box wasn't working for non-moderators. So it should be, it's up for everyone now. So you might get a few more questions now.
I saw Clara waving before.
I was like,
That was it. She was trying to get our attention, and it has been fixed now. Apologies, everyone.
Yeah. Is it fairly obvious that this is our first Zoom? How are we doing?
No, you're doing really well. You're doing
right.
really well, and that's very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
And somebody says hello to Rusty too. Thank
Oh.
you. He's gone back to bed.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a hard day for Rusty.
He had to get up.
Yeah. So you know, it becomes incredibly important that we use all these little aspects. You know, the work of Walter Jean, another great Aussie guy, and the soil sponge really brings to light what's happening in the soil and how you can be part of making really great soil. Gabe Brown, as I said, with exudates was a real eye-opener to me. You know, I think it's really important that we do take these things and to make them part of how we run our farm, especially how we implement the ethics and principles of permaculture. But just to get back onto biodynamics a little bit more, take us a little bit further into the woo-woo, if you like. One of the things that works really well for me is this concept in biodynamics of there being, apart from just the physical body, we have an astral body and an etheric body. And one of the things that is being nourished through biodynamic food is these astral and etheric bodies. The etheric body is kind of explained in you know, the people who, and I'm not blessed with this, mind you, but people who consistently see auras around people. You know, that etheric body follows you everywhere you go. And if we're going to be fully complete nutrition, we need to nourish that etheric and that astral body as well as our physical body. And biodynamics can help you do that. But as I said in the first instance, you don't have to go there. These preparations work for the farmer and the gardener. And as Priestley said, the only way they won't work is if you don't use them. So, you know, I'd invite people to get started when time allows. We'll have some field days and things where people can come and learn about making the preparations, because they're not expensive. You can make them yourself. And you can apply the preparations yourself. So,
Talk about a couple of them, like ones that people might know a little bit about or heard of.
well, have people heard of biodynamics?
I think some people have, but it would be great to get a little bit more information. We also have a number of questions here. Would you like to go through those, or would you
Sure.
like to explain a bit more about biodynamics?
Now go with the questions.
Okay, so look, Lisa's letting us know that there is a holistic decision-making course with Dan Palmer coming up later in October, if anyone's interested. Dance is asking, regenerative ag works well with food plants. Is soil improved by ornamental or native species?
Oh, most definitely. Syntropics is another one of those little tools you can put on your in your toolbox. Syntropics works particularly with, I guess, with those exudates that we talked about before, but particularly using eucalypts in a fast carbon pathway to get to build soil and humus, but also around building carbon in the soil and providing for mulch and that sort of thing as well. So,
sorry.
Go on.
Can I just ask a really naive question here? What do you mean by exudates?
Oh, exudates. You know how the photosynthesis creates sugars from the sun.
Yep.
And those sugars are exuded through at the tip of the root system, and when they exude, they feed the bacteria in the soil that allows for dynamic soil.
Yeah. Okay. I did know that. Just it was the word got me. Thank you. The next question is from Clara. What type of food are you producing? I think is the word for missing there, Clara, for animals and plants. How does animal care fit into your permaculture system?
It's incredibly important for us, actually. I don't know. What's the list of animals that we have and how do we care for them? Kate's a great animal carer.
Well, we try, well, we don't try, we do, we allow our animals to be the animals they're meant to be. And so they're allowed to experience the full range of their desires and needs. And so if our chickens decide to go clucky, doesn't happen very often, but if they do, they're allowed to experience that, and we find them a nice place for them to lay and hatch their eggs. That's just one thing. We have our rooster in with our hens to enable them to experience that whole aspect of being a chicken and poultry. The rooster sorts out squabbles and fights and pecking orders, and he makes sure everybody's kept happy and in their place, and protects them and things like that. So that's just one thing. We have our geese are allowed to be geese and wander around the farm, and
the pig explores his pigginess.
The pig explores his pigginess. He has various places that she actually has various fenced off areas that regenerate. So we can, like with cell grazing, the pig has cells that regenerate after she moves out. So that there's a place for her to go back into and have greens and roots and whatever she desires. So it's about allowing our animals to be the animal that they are is what we like to do. So our chickens, even though they're confined in an air in their domes, there's plenty of space for that number of chickens. They have a rooster in there with them, and they are moved every 2 weeks onto fresh, beautiful pasture, basically, of herbs. There's herbs grown there that they can medicate on if they need to. They get weeds put in from the garden, the weeds are put in there, as well as all the leftover vegetables that have that are finished, and just plenty of grasses, seeds, insects. So they're in a safe enclosure. They can't, the fox can't get them, or they're protected. So making sure that everything is able to be the animal that they want to be is a big thing. Moving all our animals on regularly, so that they're not on the same piece of pasture or garden bed, whatever it is, regularly so that there isn't any chance of intestinal parasites building up. So we don't worm our animals. They are holistically managed, I guess. So being able to self-medicate on various herbs, or pasture or weeds, and moving them on continuously so that they're not back in the same place, so that any intestinal worms, the cycle has been broken. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
We have goats and cows for milk, and we have geese just because we like the geese.
A little pony just because.
As company for the cow. We have lots of chickens, of course, because that's the system we use in the market garden. And the pig, she helps cultivate. We have pig, what we call a pig tractor. She can get into the garden with electric fencing and cultivate, dig up and weed various beds. But you know, really, we're not asking any of the animals to do anything they wouldn't normally do. Pigs love to dig and root things up. So, you know, you just maximise their desires to help you out. You know, it's,
the guinea pigs are our solar-powered lawn mowers. So they move around mowing the lawn.
a lot of it is what we do is for educational purposes as well. So, you know, it's showing people that to have a guinea pig in the backyard, it's great for the children. They eat your veggie scraps if you don't want to have chooks, and they provide you with some manure for your compost heap. So it's you know, multiple stacking functions for these little guinea pigs. So you know.
Kerry asked whether you still have guinea pigs under your seedling hardening off tables.
Who did, Marie?
No, Kerry just asked that.
Oh, Kerry, yes. They do go under there occasionally if the grass gets long. Again, we also have cages, guinea pig cages under our strawberry wicking beds, which are bathtubs. So if the grass gets long under those, we can pop them in there for a while and they can eat all the grass out underneath the guinea pig, with the strawberries. And
I just see in chats someone has mentioned Charlie Arnott, and I have to bring your attention. We were talking about how do you get into biodynamics, and I've been involved with Charlie and Hamish McCabe. They did a session at Brinklewood, which is almost on the Central Coast, out at Broke. But Charlie does some fantastic work in podcasts and that sort of thing. And Hamish is, I'm sort of in partnership with Hamish in distributing biodynamic preparations. So to get in touch with Charlie Arnott or Hamish McCabe would be a fabulous way to get started in biodynamics. Absolutely. Two very, very knowledgeable guys and quite nice fellas too.
That actually brings us to Kerry's question. Do you think you can just use purchased biodynamic preparations and gain benefits without fully understanding what biodynamic is, that is?
Yeah, absolutely. This is an incredibly important point that, you know, any talk that puts you off biodynamics because it's elitist or cultist or anything like that, don't worry about it. As I've said a few times, the only way these things won't work is if you don't use them. So you get some biodynamic preparations and you put them out and notice the difference. See your soil structure improve in next to no time. We had a young bloke here in Maitland that came and got involved with the preparations, just using 500, the horn manure concentrate, and saw an incredible improvement in his place in about 3 months. And he was totally sold on it. And you will see those benefits that quickly. Improvements come in soil structure and humus building through using the preparations without having to go dancing naked around on the full moon and all that sort of stuff. Not that, that's fun, but it's not necessary.
Excellent. There's just a couple of other comments here that there was a biodynamic winery in WA that was featured in a recent Garden in Australia episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just a few comments about bees and guinea pigs.
Yes.
The wine thing is incredible to comment on, because it has been the real burgeoning of biodynamics has been in the wine industry. And this is primarily because it's incredibly easy to taste the difference. In a biodynamic wine, the proof becomes incredibly more tangible than you know, in a lot of other cases with vegetables and that sort of thing. Fruits is another way, you know, biodynamic fruits. John Priestley, who we often quote, who is now passed, had a biodynamic citrus orchard out of Patterson, and he was renowned through the east coast of Australia for his citrus, with an unexplainable difference in the quality and the taste of the produce. You know, that sounds a little bit hyperbole, I suppose, and the you know, the proof of the pudding's in the eating, of course. And I would just tell people to have a go. You know, just do it.
Can you just repeat the names of the two gentlemen suppliers, please? So one was Charlie Arnott and Hamish. Who was the person you work with? MC.
MAC.
No, MCKAY.
Okay, great, thank you.
No, Hamish, sorry, Hamish has an organisation called Biodynamics 2024. Biodynamics 2024, and that's predicated on his resolve to see biodynamics mainstream within the next 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So we've got some work to do, but it is happening.
Yeah. There's a great question here from Jem. What's been a mistake you've made that you've learned a lot from?
Oh, crikey, that's just such a big list. An important one. There's lots of little mistakes, and you know, I think the people who haven't made mistakes haven't learned very much, quite frankly. So making mistakes is not a problem. It's what you do with the information you gain from making the mistakes. I think that perhaps the big mistake for us was probably
leaving it too late.
yeah, you know, getting into this after we've had a career in the mines and you know, been teaching in schools for 20 years and thought, well, you know, what we'd have to do is make a positive impact on the planet, and if we'd have done it 15 or 20 years earlier, we could have made more of an impact on the planet, I guess. So yeah, so getting started late was probably one of the regrets. But on the farm itself, I don't know, things just seem to build on themselves. If you start out, once again, making decisions on the permaculture ethic, guided by holistic management and just generally working towards one of the driving forces for us has been supplying nutritious food, especially for children, which is kind of where Kate really comes from with a passion to give children the sorts of education that can help them to build into being, nice people and productive people and that sort of thing. And so you start working with the ethics and principles towards those ends, and the little things that go wrong. Maybe one of the small things that comes to mind while I'm talking are timers on our taps, because we're totally on rainwater here. We don't have access to aquifers or rivers or anything like that. And if a hose bursts, or if you leave a hose on or something, and you've drained a tank of rainwater, it can be fairly serious. So we went out and invested in a heap of those nice cheap tap timers that can only allow the water to run for 30 minutes, or I think at worst an hour or something like that. So cheap tap timers, and just living within the ethics and principles of permaculture.
Good advice. And Jim says thank you for sharing that. Liam Brock Ellis is asking, with long ripening annual crops, how does the mandala rotation work? So for things like tomatoes, capsicums, or cremelons, etc.
Yeah, cool. That's a good question. And it lends itself also to seed saving, where you do need some extra time. But when the chickens leave a particular site, it's 6 months before they get back to that site again. That's how the rotation works. So most things will mature in that time. We do have areas outside of the circular beds in the mandalas, and also within the mandalas themselves, the sites where we build our compost. They're a compost heap for 6 months, and they're growing some of the longer term things for the other 6 months. This is where I could have had a presentation for Kerry and shown you the circles and all that sort of thing.
That's my question. How big is each circle? So you've got 7 circles in each mandala, and you say you've got 49 all up. How big is each circle?
Each circle is 4 meters diameter.
Wow.
And that size is for the organic standard for a chicken to have 1 square meter.
Yep.
And that allows for 12 chickens. We only run 10 because we're softies. But that works best for us. So 4 meters gives you 12 square meters in the domes, and that works.
And is it a complicated rotation between the circles and crops?
It's a little bit like a waltz or a salsa or something, once you get the rhythm, it all goes very, very nicely.
So there's 4 chook domes.
Yep.
And 7 mandalas. So 1 chook dome does 2 mandalas. So 1 chook dome in a figure of 8.
2 weeks in each circle.
There it goes. So it's beautiful. You can see it. So yeah, so they spend 1 chook dome spends 2 weeks on each bed. Yeah. And it goes from 1 mandala to the next mandala. So that's 12 circles. So it's 6 months before it gets back to its start. The 2 centre circles of each mandala are a habitat for beneficials. So it has a pond in it and lots of habitats for beneficials. So it has prickly prickly plants for little birds. It has a pond. It has rocks for lizards to sun on and hide under. And so that the chook dome doesn't go on there. That's just for...
We tried it, but we couldn't get the chickens to swim in the pond. So we had to exclude them from the centre circles. But just on the crops thing, we over the time we've gone for planting more and more perennial type crops in permanent beds around the outside, but also things like pumpkins and melons and that sort of thing all run on unround beds. We won't call them straight, although they look pretty straight. But longer term stuff, garlic, has to stay outside of the mandala system.
Asparagus,
right. Those sorts of
things. So we have perennial beds, longer term beds, and sprawling beds. So the pumpkins either go up vertically up A-frames, or sprawling along on the outside. We also have fruit trees within our system as well, so it's a small orchard in there also.
It's a little bit hard to be sure to say it all. I would like to invite people to come and have a look.
Well, we've just had some people saying, can we do a PCC farm tour next year?
Oh, definitely.
Definitely, yeah.
We'd love to see you.
We'll organise that. We'll do.
Yeah.
And Holly's asking, is there somewhere we can go to view photos of your mandalas? Kerry has recommended people take a look at your website.
Yeah, there are some there, I think, yeah.
But I think, yeah, we'll definitely have to have a chat to you about a visit, because it's, yeah.
Should we talk to them that we're not running that anymore?
No. We might
talk about it later.
Yeah,
the market.
Oh,
we're actually retired.
How are we going for time?
It's 8:03, so I guess we've. Kerry, did you want to have a chat? What time do you want to?
Look, I mean, I said to Mark and Kate that, an hour-ish, and if everybody's happy to stay on and keep talking, and we can stay on for a little bit longer. I mean, not too long. These guys are, and everybody's got to get some rest tonight. But I'm sure we could keep going for another 15 minutes. And anybody who can't stay is always welcome to drop off at any point. But yeah, I mean, a farm tour again would be wonderful. I'm just wondering. There was a question from Rhiannon about biodynamics and the astral body. So do we want to get a little bit woo-woo before?
Okay. It might be difficult to answer that in a short period of time. You've almost got to be an initiate. Look, the one thing I'd want to say fairly quickly is there's a lot of things that we know that we don't know we know. And we access that information through intuition in a certain degree, but there are certain things that from an entry level we really need to postulate on. Just think about for the moon calendar, the effect of the moon on the tides. For the astral body, mostly for the etheric body, the seeing of the aura. But that'll probably do for our little permaculture talk tonight, I think.
What's the information about the biodynamic food feeding the etheric? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So that might be.
But I'm not sure. I don't want to go there just now.
Okay.
No. Give me another hour and I'll work my way up to that particular point.
I know Rhiannon's a very deep thinker, so I'm sure she'd love to chew your ear at one point on that, but maybe not tonight when we're all tired. I just wondered if you might talk a little bit more about was very interested when I was just, you know, stalking you on your website recently, because I know you're always updating it and making it look even more beautiful and accessible information. Kate was in a little video, which I think related particularly to reducing waste and probably quite a bit about food waste. And she made the point about how little money she can actually feed a farm full of visitors and interns and people doing courses with you. I just wondered, Kate, if you could talk a little bit about the food side of what you do there at Purple Pear, because I've had the joy of eating some of your food many times, and it's always extraordinarily beautiful. But yeah, just what you do in far as homesteading and food preparation to save money and to use what you're growing.
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I think basically it stems down to eating in season and eating from scratch.
And eating biodynamic food.
Eating biodynamic food, but and eating simply. So, but nutritiously, you know. So making sure the food that you're eating is grown well from nourishing soil, and using the food that's in abundance at the time. Yeah, filling up on really good, nourishing, simple food.
We got a concept through the slow foods movement of conviviality, and I think conviviality that comes from cooking food, from growing food, from picking food slowly, deliberately, intentionally, brings all of that stuff together. So, you know, good, clean and fair food from slow foods has been an inspiration for us, particularly that concept of, you know, enjoying your food and the company while you're having it.
Yeah, so we buy most of our dry goods in bulk from Organic Feast, and so they have quite a great range of really good food, a lot of it local and a lot of it biodynamic. And I find that buying food in bulk is, although it can be quite expensive on the day, overall over the weeks, it's quite an inexpensive way of buying all of those things like rice and lentils and chickpeas and kidney beans and things like that. My oats, I buy oats groats, so that, and I roll my own. I've got a roller. And when you buy things dry like that rather than in tins, then it's a lot cheaper to buy a big jar, like this bigger jar full of chickpeas, and soak a cup of those a couple of times a week and cook them in our pressure cooker is a lot cheaper than buying a few tins, and it's also less waste. So buying our food that way is a lot cheaper. And I just buy one of those big jars every couple of weeks. So I buy my rice one week, my sugar one week, and my, you know, so it evens out in the long run. And then with those basic things, I use the veggies from the garden and the eggs from the chooks and the milk from the cow or the goats, and we make our own cheese, our own yogurt.
Ice cream.
And, you know, those sort of things, if we make a lot of that stuff ourselves, it's so much cheaper. Even if I've got to buy milk from the supermarket or Organic Feast, I make my own yogurt because it's still cheaper to make my own yogurt, buy their milk and make my own yogurt than it is to buy the $7 or $8 jar of yogurt. I can make my yogurt for, you know, $2 instead of $8. So you can feed a lot more people if you go to the trouble of making most of that stuff on your own. And we do a lot of preserving. So I just made strawberry jam. Was that yesterday? Yesterday. So that gives me a few jars of strawberry jams. I've made, marmalade. We've made pickles, and
we've been picking mulberries and freezing them. The idea is that when pears come in, we can preserve the pears with mulberry juice and make purple pears. Well, I'd like to put in a plug, because we sort of alluded to the fact that we don't market garden anymore. Shana, one of our PDC students and interns, has taken over the garden. And if you want to see her story, you should have a look for Purple Pear Harvest, all one word.
She has a lovely website.
She's got a nice website, and it explains the crossover better than we possibly could today. But it's all working particularly well as we go from vitality to dotage. We have this transition that's, and it's not the only transition. Purple Pear Farm is making some incredible transitions at the moment, and it's really a hive of activity, and we'd like to talk more about that sometime.
Yeah. There's
when you come and
homeschooling
visit.
and herbalists and lots of things happening here at the
Value
moment.
adding.
Yeah, so we've got some really interesting and enthusiastic and dynamic young people living here, and we're looking at quite a range of education from childhood to homeschoolers and adult ed, and Mark and I are sort of stepping back a little bit and allowing these young people to find a place here.
I just spend my days wandering in the food forest, being careful not to get dropped on by a massive piece of fruit or something.
So we're still doing things.
Not quite.
Enjoy. Mark's doing a lot with his cows and his bees and his biodynamics, of course. And I'm doing a lot of bit of gardening here and a bit of gardening there, and
spreading mulch.
Spreading
mulch spreader.
And I have my daughter and son-in-law and a granddaughter living here as well. So we've got quite a nice little community happening here.
No one from Maitland Council here, is there?
And so yeah, it's sort of our succession plan in transit, I guess. So it's you open up your heart and you open up your thoughts and you send it out there into the world, and you get all these beautiful people just
that's true.
Coming in, and it's just an amazing thing. Yeah, it's turning out really beautiful. So yes, we still have all of those things available, and yes, there's still opportunities for farm tours. You can come and visit, and we'll possibly be the ones leading you around, but there's all these other people there now doing stuff. Yeah, so it's beautiful.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it's really good.
Sounds like a good spot to leave it.
I think so. Thank you so much. It was really interesting, and yeah, now I think that we've got how many people? 33 people very keen to come and visit.
Oh, that'd be so nice.
Lovely.
We'd love you to come and visit.
Yeah.
After all, we all open up again, and it's that possibility of doing that.
Yeah, that'd be
Now in
great.
the new year.
So look, thank you so much. If everyone, imagine 33 people for a half day working there and learning. Well, yeah. If everyone would like to come off mute to say their thanks and a goodbye to Mark and Kate, you are welcome to do that. There's
Lovely.
lots of thanks going on in the
Yeah,
chat.
there's
Thank you,
well.
Mark and
Yay.
Kate.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Okay.
Thank
I can't wait to see you all in person.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, and I like to visit you again.
That was Frank. So I
Lovely.
think there are people who have been there. That's for who visited you before.
Oh
that's
yes,
for
we've
sure.
had people from the
Yeah.
before.
Yeah,
Lovely.
that's
We've
where we held
always
off.
had such a lovely connection with you guys down there, so it'd be lovely to see you up here.
We've got a lot of new members though, so I think
Oh,
there'll be
better.
a great deal of
Yeah.
interest.
No. You got
And some
such a
people
great
who can't
strong
resist a
group down
visit.
there. Sorry, what was that, Kerry?
And some people that can't resist a visit again.
Mhm.
Yeah, and sorry, what were you saying, Kate?
Oh, it's just waffling. as well.
Waffling on.
It's getting to that time of the night. That was a good way to finish it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, things like the soap making and, you know, cheese
Sourdough.
making and that sort of thing will still go on, but it won't necessarily be you.
No, we were
running
just
them.
talking, we've got a really great bread maker at the moment. She
Oh, cool.
she made us a
Sourdough fruit loaf.
loaf in
Ooh.
exchange for some honey for her mum and dad. So
Yeah.
we just had that this morning. It's so good.